All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's Lead Generation World podcast. I hope you guys are all doing really, really well today. We've got a great guest with Brent Biggs joining me today, and we're going to dive into all kinds of conversations around his past, affiliate marketing, his company Datascore, and so much more. So before we do that, I do want to run through a few housekeeping items. As you know, if you're watching live, you can certainly participate by asking questions too in the comments, whether if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can comment and we'll see it on our side, or I'll see it on my side, and I can ask Brent the questions as well. But otherwise, we're happy to have you on. Don't forget, we've got Lead Generation World coming up next month, January 8th, 9th, and 10th. I'm super excited about that. The show's shaping up really, really well. So get your pass. We've got a lot of fun things planned. We've got a lot of great content, awesome exhibit hall. We've got live music on Sunday. We've got the golf tournament on Sunday. We've got live music on Monday. We've got podcast being streamed live on LinkedIn and YouTube through the lunch. So even if you're not attending, you'll be able to check out some of that as well. And that's actually sponsored by Datascore, which is really, really cool. So hopefully we'll see you there. So enough of that. Brent, thank you for joining me today, man. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I want to, a typical thing I do with all our guests is I just kind of go to their LinkedIn profile and I just sort of check it out. And I there's always usually something relatively interesting. And generally what I'm looking for is like, how did they get into this industry? Was it like a jump from something else or whatever it may be? But yours is I'm thinking there's some details missing in your LinkedIn profile, to be honest with you. So I see you are one of the few and the proud Marines. When you back in 1995, you were in the Marines. Is that and you served 4 years?
Yeah, well, 3.5. I got out early for college, but yeah, that was an interesting experience. But it's good. It teaches you to discipline and have responsibility. I was stationed in Italy, so that was a wonderful experience to go over overseas and live. I went in at 17, so I think I was like 18 or 19 during that
Okay.
time. It was a great place to grow up, and a good structured environment. So, and I think
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service. Now you got me even more curious. So you went in at 18. What was the epithets for that? What led you to make that decision?
Yeah, I actually went in at 17. And I think for a lot of people, the military can be an escape from a bad childhood or a bad
Hmm.
environment. And so it was an escape for me from the environment that I was in. Um,
Yeah.
so, and I wanted to learn some of the skills that I find that I use today, which, obviously the Marine Corps focuses a lot on the non-commissioned officers being leaders. And so those are a lot of skills that I've learned. Also, you're 17 going to boot camp. I can tell you it was not not what I was expecting. It was definitely not what my recruiter told me.
I bet. So you were surprised by that, but so I don't want to get into too many personal details here, but that's an interesting story because what I'm looking at is, you're saying you went in at 17, likely to find some direction and stability and whatever it was that was going on. And you served 3.5 years and then utilized that for benefit and ended up going to college after that.
Yeah. So the GI Bill is actually probably like one of the best investments I've made. Yeah,
Yeah.
I used the GI Bill. Back then I was able to apparently go to school and live off $900 a month, which impresses me today. But yeah, so went to a few colleges. I was a connoisseur of junior colleges there for a while, but ended up at UW and Tacoma, and
Yeah.
yeah, that was a great school. I had a great experience there.
Then what? Like, how did you get what was your like first step into sort of the digital marketing space? Was it through school? Was it a first job? Like how did you what was the first, like I said, dipping your toes into this world that we, live in now?
So that's a funny story. So in
They all
college,
are, by the way. They all are, because
in
they like
college,
no one ever really has a direction to go somewhere. It's always something that, gets them into this industry one way or the other, But yeah, so what's the story?
yeah, I was on track to go to law school. I'd done the LSAT, the prep courses, and everything, and had been applying to law school. And I started this company. Well, actually, I had this idea about like basically my safekeeping was what it was called, but it was kind of like Dropbox before there was Dropbox. And this is back. I mean, this was like I don't know, 18 years ago when you know bandwidth was very expensive. I think it was like
Yeah.
$200 a meg. You bought a server. So we found a way, me and two of my college buddies, Nima and Eric Woodley, found a way to sort of break it to buy in bulk, but then break down the space and then sell it off. And we got into dedicated servers, which is a thing. Back then, there was no cloud. And I ended up meeting this guy, Jason Rudolph, and I think he's at DMS now. And he
Uh-huh.
owned this gaming company, and I ended up leaving my other partners, and he and I started a company together. And we had a great time. And we had this guy come along named Rick Coddington, and he was like, "Hey, if I could send some emails, I'll show you how." And I was like, "Okay, sure, right? What are you talking about? What's email gonna do?" And so that became our entryway, owning a hosting company that, and then we built an ESP, and then we were, of course, became affiliates. And back in the day of working with no, it was Hydra Media.
Yeah, Hydra.
Was a
Yep.
big. Jason Walker and them were a huge contribution to the growth of our business. And so that was my intro into affiliate marketing. Um,
Okay,
yeah,
so wait, just taking a step back. So you guys started this company as a server and selling space on the server. Guy comes, he goes, "Hey, can I send email from this server?" Or what was the
yeah.
ask with
So we
regards
were
to
doing
email?
we were doing dedicated servers, and we were selling them. And I noticed that this is very very early on. So, and I was noticing like I was like, well, wait a minute, this guy's paying us $500, and then I'm selling it for 1,000, and I'm like, Jason, like I just keep raising the price, and we were just naive. Like we didn't know. We were just like, okay, well, let's make as much money off the server as we can. I mean, obviously there were repercussions that we learned going along, and we changed, but yeah, and so Rick wanted to show us what he was doing so we could understand it. And so I guess because of Rick and Jason, this is where I'm
Yeah.
at now. But that was the
Yeah,
beginning
yeah.
of a journey.
Yeah, so then you're like, okay, this is really interesting, this sending mail and then learning about the sort of affiliate space and offers and all this sort of stuff. And so is that sort of was at that time the niche that you guys were mailers?
Yeah, so we became affiliate, mailers, typical kind of, lead generation stuff.
Yeah.
Back when it was, back then you could, get a Volo and make 30 grand a month off of it, right? So it was really easy to make a lot of money back then. It's a lot difficult now.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, that's what we started. And then I decided that the best place to be as we started seeing how things were going wrong, the best way to be is to start creating your own software, right? And
Mhm.
basically be in control. And then that way you could control the clients and you offered a better, higher value. And by controlling the clients, I mean that you were able to put throttles in place and monitor behavior because, if you have something that's very powerful, people can come in and abuse it. And
Yeah.
we've dealt with that. We've dealt with people that came in and abused it and blew it up. And we've it was a trial and error learning for a long time.
Yeah. And like you said back then, I mean, there was a lot of money to be made, right? There's a lot of
Um,
people that made a lot of money sending offers. So I have to imagine, sort of the heyday to some extent of affiliate marketing and offers and all that sort of stuff. I mean, companies like Hydra were crushing it back then,
yeah.
right? I mean, and then what did they turn it? They got acquired, right? By some right? Or did they go to,
Well,
what
the
happened to Hydra?
Walkers, Jason and them, I think split from Zach, and then W4 was created.
W4, that's right.
Yeah, so
Yes,
then
yes.
W4, and then I think W4 got acquired by DMS. I think that's how that went.
DMS,
But I'm
yeah.
not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So what was some crazy things like back then where, I mean, was it just like, the Wild West for the most part, like anything goes, like you pick up offers and just and make it work and what was it like back then?
Well, the industry was very young, and being older, and in retrospect,
Yeah.
things should have been done differently, right? And it was really easy to make money, and there weren't a lot of the regulations that were in place, and I mean it particularly like the regulation around continuity. So it all stems from, can you convert, can it generate a sale? I mean, back in the day, you were doing a nutraceutical with a 495 charge to the consumer that had a
Mhm.
rebill that they've calculated
Yeah.
lifetime value. You're getting 50 to $60 off of that. Well, all of a sudden you can pop 100, 200 sales a day at a 495 credit card entry, and it was just it was insane amount of money to be made at that age. And
Yeah.
the thing that you know we were very foresightful for was planning for the future, in the sense of, where does technology need to be, right? And so we
Mhm.
for the time, we wanted to focus on building technology, and kind of seeing that, like, hey, this is too good to be true. It's not going to last forever, right? And
Mhm.
obviously it didn't.
Yeah, before we get into, I'm looking at, and that was that Verona Technologies?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you ran that for 11 years according to, LinkedIn. Were you always did you always get a sense that you're, going to be sort of an entrepreneur, or like, or was that something that you just had a sense for, or was this sort of a surprise to you?
It's sort of a surprise. I mean, I think Jason really pulled that out of me. He was a great
Yeah.
business partner to be in business with. But I remember we were driving in his truck, and he's like, I was thinking maybe you should skip law school for a year, and let's see if this works. And I was like, sounds good. Let's do it. Right. I didn't really want to go
Yeah.
study anymore. So I just really fell into it. And
Yeah.
I think I have a way of seeing things, seeing solutions in a way that other people don't,
Uh-huh.
and then finding them. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, I see things differently than I think other
Yeah.
people. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes I get in trouble. So
No, that's great. It seems to be working out. Okay, so speaking of seeing things, you saw an opportunity. You saw, my guess is, through Verona, you were learning to optimize different offers, campaigns, all these sorts of things, and saw an opportunity. Tell me a little bit about what type of things you were doing, and then where you decided to sort of turn that into a product yourself, and a
yeah.
company like Datascore.
Well, as the company grew, I started hiring in people that were smarter than me. I think that's a key talent,
Yeah.
is to have people way smarter than you that surround you. And I met a guy named Michael Teisch, and he taught me all about optimization. Right, he was really big about multivariate text. Multivariate testing was an early thing that we adopted into our mail manager product that we developed later at Verona. And we began to look at optimization, and we built another product called Replay that focused on, well, if a person does this, what will they do next? So that was sort of our first dive. That was our first dive into analytics and making predictions by analytics. The problem was, is back then, before there was, serverless SQL products like BigQuery, or Athena, you could only do small samples of data, and we were dealing with large, large logs. So I hired a business analyst who first built up what I call transitional probabilities. I'm sure there's some technical term, and I'm destroying it, but and that was our first look at, like, could we predict the action of something, of a user, based upon previous actions and other features about them. And we had success in that early on, in the Replay product. So that was as we matured in age and in experience and in technology, we really focused on optimization.
Yeah.
And I have to
So wait,
give a shout
so
out to Michael Tice. He was the one that brought that. He was the one that really pushed that.
yeah. So you called it transitional probabilities, is that what you said?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so you were you taking it so something running down one maybe product funnel could potentially be offered something else, or was it more about actions being taken on a landing page or a page or something like that that they would transfer over to something another action? How did you
Right.
guys sort of utilize that?
Great question. So it was obviously everything's a CPA, right? So it was more about actions. So if a user created a positive event, basically a click and not an unsub or non-response on this offer, right?
Yeah.
Would they do it on these other four offers? And I mean, the easiest way to say it is like, if they did, home insurance, would they do auto insurance? I mean, it's
Yep.
kind of simplistic right there, but that's what we were figuring out, and we had success early on doing that, and that led to other stuff.
Tell me. So, okay, so it did give you some insight, and it did sort of prove out to you found some trends that the individuals that clicked on whatever it may be would also likely do the same. Just on that note, did was it did you hypothesize that they were clicking on those other items because they were like-minded offers, or were some people just more click happy than others? Do you know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
find somebody that just clicks on stuff out there, they're gonna click on anything potentially, or was it more specific to the offer? Was a homeowner, more likely to click on an auto offer, you know?
Well, and so that was one of the first lessons that we learned, is that you can skew the results, because there are some people, if you don't isolate for like, further down the funnel, if you
Yeah.
don't look further down the funnel, then you get people that just like to click on stuff. And
Yeah.
so while your click through ratios go up and your open ratios go up, does the conversion on the back end go up? We did see a lift in ECPM, but it was relative because you didn't have to send as much to generate the click.
Mhm.
Right. And so it wasn't this enormous breakthrough of technology. It was just kind of one of these experiences that, I went through, that was like an aha moment, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something more here.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense because I'm sure you're saying, okay, now this was just the entrance to this pathway that's leading you down a whole bunch of other questions. What if we do this? What if we do that? So, what were some of those next, steps in the evolution of what you were doing with the data?
Well, what we early started doing was playing with some predictive modeling. As AI became, there was a kind of a where the ideals didn't catch up to the tech ability, the infrastructure capacity. So as the cloud became more available, and the serverless platforms became out there, and the democratization of AI came from Google and Amazon, to where you could access some of these endpoints. We began to play with the prediction of clickability, like who's going to click, right? And but that kind of
Mhm.
still let us down. That was our monetization point. So we wanted to focus on click. The hardest thing to do is have data. We had a lot of log data that we could do click prediction on, and it also let us in to start to explore emotion. So very
Mhm.
early on, there were, like in the first kind of some natural language processing, sentiment analysis models that came out, there were only 4 emotions. But we found that, again, this was a finding that we found, that you could create a strong response from a person by the way you set a subject line and a call to action. And kind of the thing I always tell people is like, we did this test where it was like, you're going to die. And then the
Mhm.
call to action was like, get life insurance to save your family. Right, pretty extreme, and we got really good click throughs, and we got really high unsubs. So there's a very intense emotional response to that, right?
Yeah,
So people
yeah.
were very mad. So and that was another piece that kind of that started fitting together. in my head about where we should go. Yeah, and so what the overall ideal at the time was we wanted to. I mean, I know this is so novel, everyone. We wanted to send less and make more because
Yeah.
the trend of with email was it was getting more and more difficult to deliver, and so you had to do less and less and less. And I think the maturity of where we were going was, hey, we want to move away from being affiliates in that approach, and more into like providing some solutions that brands will want to buy and participate in. And so we take all that knowledge of performance marketing, these experiments that we did through over the years, to actually create something that is really amazing.
Yeah. Before we get into that, let's just set the groundwork as far as AI goes, because obviously, for what maybe the last 5 years, it's a buzzword. It's people trying to figure out how to utilize it in their organizations to be more efficient and effective. But are they? But sometimes it's being misrepresented, right? So, let's just kind of define what AI is and what it's not. So, how do because there's always some misconceptions, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's the new buzzword
Yeah.
out there, and I think it's used a lot with conversational AI, which is a version of machine learning. I guess it depends on how you deploy it. Dialogue flow is a popular way. Um, the But that's not the AI that we're focused on. Our focus, so that's one type, right? And then you have your machine learning models that are binary classification models, supervised machine learning, unsupervised machine learning, neural networking. And so there's all these different out there. But right now, everyone, or what I've seen in the marketplace, is everyone yells AI, right? Because it's a good buzzword. But I think there needs to be a further investigation as to, well, what exactly does that mean and how do you implement that in your product, right? So there's just so many different types. For us, ours is doing classification, supervised machine learning models, classifying outcomes and trying to predict those outcomes in the future. And then there's emotional element, right? The sentiment analysis side of the world, of the AI world, where you're extracting emotion from written text, or I think it's written text right now. It's primarily the thing. So, and we're training to that, but we talk about that. We talk about that later. So,
Okay. Yeah. So it's machine learning. It's taking is it taking the information in real time? Is it making calls and actions and decision making in real time? Is that sort of where you guys are at, or how does that
no,
work?
not for us. We don't think that it's necessary. Ours is, our flagship product is predicting the best time and day to engage with a consumer. It's omni-channel. Our primary focus has been in the call center, the telecommunications world. I see a lot of parallels between what is going on in telecommunication and what I experienced in email. I think it's a good thing. What the movement that they're doing in the telemarketing world. So ours is focused on that, and so the way it works is that we've taken millions and tens of millions of call events that occurred and extract features from the lead information. I think we used around 2,200 features in our model, and we built the machine learning model. And what happens is the client comes to us, give us their data, we're going to put it in the model based upon their, there's limits of how many calls they can take per hour, their time schedule, their call center hours, and we're going to put that in there and then predict within those parameters what is the best time and day to call. So we're looking at where there's a speed to lead approach. Ours is not a speed to lead approach. Ours is a lot more methodical of well, it's probably best to contact this person 3 days from now at 1 p.m. in the afternoon if you're going to call them.
Yep.
So that's what we're focused on.
Yeah, that's I was gonna my next question was, okay, so let's also set the groundwork of just sort of giving us an explanation of what AI is. And I think you did. Is there before we move on, is there a summary of what services you guys offer, or is that it as a whole
That's
that
it.
you
We
just
call it
explained?
our
Yep.
engagement dialing platform,
Yep.
which
Okay.
is either fully managed or self-service.
Yeah.
But
Okay, yeah, so let's get back to that what you were talking about. So predicting, time of day and best time to get successful with either contacting them, then pick up the phone, or does this also take into account text messaging?
yeah, it does. So
Okay.
it works with text messaging. We have a few clients right now using it for text messaging.
Yeah. So just generally speaking, like what kind of trends are you seeing as far as contact strategies go? Because you touched on speed to lead from really last 15 years, or maybe a few more. Speed to lead was the holy grail of how you're going to win business. Right? It's getting on the phone as fast as possible, beating everybody to the punch,
Mhm.
and getting on that consumer on the phone as fast as possible. Now, back in the day, that was a reasonable and a very successful strategy, because people pick up the phone back then, right? There really wasn't text messaging or anything like that, and it was relatively easier. To pick up to get people to pick up the phone, especially those that filled out a form and are expecting a call.
But
Um, that's even maybe changed now, right? I mean, it's a little bit harder. People aren't picking up the phone unless it says mom or, dad or girlfriend
right.
or whatever may be on the thing. And it's becoming increasingly difficult. So just generally, like, what sort of trends are you seeing with its contact conversion numbers continually going down? Like what I don't know. Give me sort of the state of contact strategies today and what's happening and where it's going.
Well, so my disclaimer is that I'm not a call center expert at all by any
Yeah.
means. In fact, I hired someone, Sherry Savesky, who's been teaching me and bringing me up to speed.
Yeah.
I still put on my performance marketing hat when I look at these. Sorry about that. When I look at
Yeah.
this problem, so
Uh,
the trend that I see is that for us, our initial pitch is, hey, because everyone's stuck on speed to lead. Give me all the data you can't connect with, and we're gonna reach them. So we've received data that's been dialed 87 times, and on first dial, we're connecting. We have a 27-30% connection rate. And we can talk about that because that's actually verified by a QA team that listens to every single call recording because we need labeled data in order to retrain the model. So that's part of
yeah.
our AI process. Um,
Okay, so wait, I want to just stop you for one second because I want to make sure it's clear to the listeners that because just a minute ago we were talking about your services, but people, you guys are actually making us dials on behalf of your clients, not just providing a score per se on the data. You guys
right.
are facilitating the outbound dials. That's
That's
correct?
correct. Yeah, thank you for pointing that
Okay.
out.
Yeah.
Right. And what's because we're not speed to lead, because we're built on a very compliant infrastructure. So our dialer per se, or the infrastructure that we're working off of, is Twilio.
Hmm.
And if you've ever tried to work with Twilio, they don't let you get away with anything. So the
Yeah.
fact that we can do 33 to 50 million dials a month on Twilio, month after month after month, should tell you that what we have is something that um, that that doesn't cause problems, that doesn't cause complaints.
Hmm.
Because of the AI, which is the star of everything, in the ecosystem. We don't need to rotate DIDs. I have not rotated DIDs for one client. We do not get labeled scam or spam. We have had some issues with the crowdsourcing, but that came, the crowdsourcing apps, Robokilling or
Oh.
something like that. But that comes from something that we've inherited from the IPs. See, I still think about email stuff. The phone numbers
Yeah.
that we got from Twilio, and so by the time we get them, we clean them up. We do not have this scam spam labeling like by any of the Haya, First Orion, or TNS. We're not rotating DIDs. and we're not nuisance dialing them, and we're being very compliant because, like I said, Twilio would kick us off in a second. So, but that all comes because we're able to make that connectivity. And the other thing is that think about it, where speed to dial, you're on a race to the bottom, right? Connectivity goes low. So what do? Buy more leads. What do? Dial more. You change your dialing strategy. I'm going to dial someone 5 times back to back. I actually just had that happen to me today. And, that really makes the problem worse, right? For us, because we're connecting at 30%, if you think about it, you have a call center and you want 30 calls an hour. I only need to call 100 people to get you 30 humans on the phone, right? So you want 300, I can dial 1,000. Well, there's not a lot of dialing going on throughout the day because the connectivity is so high. So that sort of feeds to the ideal result of increasing your connectivity when you're compared against, some people are dialing 50,000 dials before noon on, on your speed to lead approach. So,
right.
So our trend, what we're seeing is we've built the technology to align with the stakeholders. And I think like with the government, the consumer, the carriers, and the company that wants to sell a product because someone's interested in their product. So we believe that this product absolutely meets all their objectives. And that's why we're not getting caught in the nets of the spam.
Yeah, well, okay, I mean, there's so much there to unpack, because I'm sure a lot of people's ears perked up at a number of things you just said. One is obviously 30% contact rate is this data that has already been called a couple times potentially by the company, or are these brand new fresh leads that come in real time sort of thing?
No, I wish we could get the fresh leads, but it seems like everybody wants to give us the unreachable leads, which is fine. So no, this is on leads that have been dialed, 30, 40, 50 times. With some customers, they dial them for a week and then we get them, which is fine. And then, we start out our dialing strategy. The important thing I like to note is we don't call someone more than once or twice a month. That's it. In order, because we don't need to, because we get so much engagement.
Yeah, it's mind blowing, because you're talking, and it's like, what's so interesting is that you're seeing the people that are, or the companies that are bringing you data, have already dialed it a ton. They say a ton, and you are like a sniper sitting up there and just going bam and getting them on the phone. At some point in time after, right? I'm sure it doesn't necessarily happen day one, right? Day two, whatever it is, whatever the AI, whenever your predictive timing is, of course. But that is really, really interesting, and I'm sure people, are, like I said, mind blown by that idea that it can be boiled down to that sniper approach of timing, with timing of getting a hold of somebody, that if you nail the timing, that they will pick up. Meanwhile, these guys are spraying with machine guns and not being successful, right? They're missing the target.
Well, I think there's a what I learned back in the affiliate marketing days is it's good to plan for tomorrow. I mean, it's pretty obvious that the analytics company know that there's DID rotation going on.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious they're going to want to stop it. So, what I tell potential clients now is do what works. Like, please keep doing that. Like, if you're making a ton of money, that works for you, go for it. But give me 10% of your business. Give me 10% of the opportunity so that you're planning for the day that it's going to happen. I will never forget the day that Yahoo got sold to Verizon. Yeah. And I woke up, I was waking up, and the email was gone. And I think it just happened when Verizon sold Yahoo back to Apollo. There were a lot of people that were able to get into Yahoo. Apollo bought them, and that just died. And I see that sort of Armageddon day with DID rotation happening. One day, everyone's going to go in the call center. They're going to be at 0.5. And the carriers are all going to high-five that they accomplished their mission.
I mean, phone calls are, robocalls, at least from a government standpoint and a regulator standpoint, are at the crutch of why the industry as a whole is under scrutiny, right? It's the phone calls that are highlighting the industry to the regulators, and unfortunately, I think yes, there are brands that call inquiries that are opt-in that have opted to get those phone calls, so there's nothing illegal about it, but they do call them a lot and maybe too much. But the real offenders are the spammers that are getting data and calling us when we're not requesting it, and those are not really a part of our industry. But they're pointing regulators this direction. And so, to your point, though, is that if regulators are trying to minimize the amount of unwanted calls people are getting,
Mhm.
it's there's no reason why you wouldn't think they're going to do their best to shut down the ability for calls to even take place from a company to a individual.
And I think that's if we look at the similarities that I experienced with email,
Yeah.
um, the one thing that you had when you had Eric Troutman, I hope I said his last name correctly,
Yep.
on was there are a lot of vendors out there that are just pure brokers selling data, and they're mixing the kind of cutting the data up, right, instead of working directly with publishers. And they're feeling the people are being sold records that they think are opt-in, and you come to find out they really didn't opt in because they kind of sprinkled in some old co-reg leads in there to
Mm,
pad the file. And then the brand, like some of our brand clients, what alternative do they have than to use a Vici dialer or another dialer and dial this way? Is there an alternative for them that can make them just as much money? And what we've seen with our customers is we can do it better the right way, and not only decrease their costs because we're dialing less, right? But
mm,
also create their call center efficiency because they're getting engaged customers that want to be on the phone, not a lot of DNCs. Um, and we're increasing their sales all at the same time. So I feel, I believe that we're the only alternative to the current way of doing things. And there's an omni-channel approach to that because as you come in with the platform, you have the outbound calling. And let's say that you don't reach someone, that connectivity. When we look at engagement, how do we engage with the voicemail? If there's consent for pre-recorded message, we have an option to leave a voicemail at that moment. And there's an option to send a text message and follow up and have them call you back. So there's a lot of ways to just take that list and in your one contact, engage with them in 3 different channels.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, in this conversation, because obviously we don't have necessarily all day, but we're simplifying a little bit of the conversation. It's not as easy as it sounds, because people that have data or leads that have come in, they've requested information. Um, we know that the contact rate generally goes down over time. We know that, at least based on their process. But you know, so it's not just a matter of, okay, we'll just call it 3 weeks from now, or call it one time. It's all the complicated part of it is figuring out when, how, and timing, and messaging, and all that sort of stuff, which is what you guys do. So it's really interesting, again, to me, that you guys have figured that sort of science out, to make that work. I'm curious, though, if that science applies, really, that strategy applies just for those older leads. I don't know, a week old, I don't know, whatever it is, that have already gone through like the quick call process. I don't know if you want to call it that or not, but or if you were to get a real time lead in today, or be in, use your system to take real time leads, would you see a higher increase in contact rates as well with those leads, even though they're being potentially called from other companies as well, and it's more competitive? Does that make sense?
It does. I I don't really have a solid answer to that because we've
Yeah.
dealt with like the unreachable leads.
Yep.
The discussions that we have is, well, why not the leads that came in overnight? We can put in a model that just predicts it within the day, That way,
Yeah.
when you're waking up, instead of just guessing what you're going to call, there's at least some logic applied to your approach for the day. That's
Yeah, that's
been
a great
the
idea.
discussions we've been having.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, overnight, Sundays, what sometimes companies don't have agents on Sundays, of course, to take those inquiries. So then what happens on Monday? They've got a ton of leads. And
Mhm.
what are they doing? They're generally calling leads that are coming in that miss second. And then the leads that are on Sunday get filtered in, but they may not even get called till later Monday because there's new leads coming in that Monday, that at that time. So it gets all backed up and then generally spreads out. But so if you were to take those leads and have a specific time that they pop up to call, or you guys call them at the right time, that makes a lot of, it could be more effective. Probably would be more effective.
I mean, if someone's on your page and they do a submit, I'm all about calling that person right then, right? I mean, that's
100%.
they're totally
Yeah.
interested. I don't think I could predict it better than real time. So,
Yeah.
um, but what do
But
you
the
do when
follow ups and all that other stuff.
win backs and
Yeah.
when customers leave?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't want to like get too much into your secret sauce and all that sort of stuff. But how much does it change sort of these trends from client to client or product to product for when to call, like the sniper approach? Like, does it change based on demographic, age, location, or product that they're looking at? Or is it all sort of like a bell curve? Like most people like to be called at 2 o'clock. I don't know, whatever it is.
So great question. It's funny. We had our annual investor meeting yesterday, and part of the task of our chief data science is to put together the development of the product and where we've gone over the last year, and what his team has done. And it was really impressive to see that the evolution of the model and the things that go into the model. And I can tell you that it's individually based. It's just creating these classes of people, and looking at the features from there. So it's not so much about like the product that matters. It's more about the features, about the individual and the location that they're at, that you're able to extract and then enrich and put into the model. So I'm not a data scientist. Again, I'll go back to the thing that I'm smart enough to know how to hire someone smarter than me. And
Mhm.
Ahmed has a PhD in this field, so he's done a great job. But I can tell you, it's not as simple as like, oh, we're gonna everyone this time zone. We're gonna
Yeah.
call. There's the feature extraction, the exploration of the data is really the secret behind finding it and making it work, and then having a good ML ops where you can retrain, having a great QA team. Because if the QA team isn't taking the call recordings and labeling them, oh, hey, this one was a human, but it was machine, and or I think we have like 5 classes for the call. If they're not doing that and that's broken, because the models we're building are based upon algorithms that are out there, XGBoost, random forest. These are things that everybody had. We did not go and write an algorithm, right? It's all about the data. The data makes the
Mhm.
model. So we just spent a lot of time with the data to have really good data. Our data engineering team does a great job structuring the data, getting it into the data warehouse, and that is what makes the model right there.
Yeah.
The data.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just so interesting, to have that insight into these different uh, groups of data and how to get a hold of them and whatever what would be more successful. So, as you guys continue to win win clients and show the value of your service. How do you guys do you guys have sort of a direction or roadmap of like how you sort of continue to evolve or develop other products or services, or are you solely focused on just continuing to hone in on what you guys are doing now with predictive dialing?
Yeah. So I would say that it's not predictive dialing, but, because there's a negative connotation of predictive dialing.
Yeah, I when I said that, I meant, you know what I meant by it. I
Yeah, I
didn't
know
mean
what you
like
meant.
a predictive dialer, but,
I
just
said it for a long
determining when
time,
to
and I was,
dial.
yeah. It's a great question because the problem that I look at, not the problem, but what happens when you reach everybody, right? You have 100% list penetration. You know that your text message got there and they saw your ad. You know that the voicemail got there and they listened to it, and you know that they picked up the phone, right? So you have 100%. So what do you do next? And this is the key part about engagement, and that's about picking the right person or getting them through the conversational AI, or in the call center, appealing to them through tone, inflection, and emotion. And so now you've connected that person. You have an opportunity. How do you increase the value of the product? You close more, right? I mean, it's not rocket science there, right? You just want to close more. So going back to my email days, we spent some time with the emotion. I gave that example, and so now we're focused on taking snapshots of a call and turning it into a spectrogram, classifying that with tone and inflection, and then looking at quickly translating the conversation to text, or transcribing the conversation to text, extracting sentiment from there, and then looking at how we can in real time either change the conversation that the conversational AI is having, or change the conversation that the agent is having. And that's our next step for the next year, is to perfect that process. So for our clients, great, we're connecting you. Here's the engagement. Now let's get them to close even more. So that's our next step forward, is looking at emotion. Because I think a lot of people make decisions emotionally, make purchases emotionally. So if we can say it with the right tone and inflection and the right things in rebuttal, and of course we could track that and quantify the returns, then we're going to increase close rates. Increased close rates makes it a better product for the clients.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Sort of continuing down that sort of sales funnel, like you said. I mean, you've sort of figured out the getting them on the phone or getting a contact part of it. Now, contact to sale. How do we improve that as well? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's really really exciting. So I had a couple people ask for your website, which I did put up there for a minute, and I also put it in the comments, and then I also linked your LinkedIn page on the in the comments too. So anybody listening, feel free to reach out to Brent there too, and check out his website at datascore.ai. But you'll also be at Lead Generation World January 8th, 9th, and 10th in San Diego. So I know one of those individuals that commented is going to be there too. So feel free, and you guys can connect there. But anybody else that wants to reach out, is that probably the best way to connect with you on LinkedIn, or just go through the website?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great.
Yeah, cool. Well, Brent, it's been, I mean, I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, if we keep digging in, we can talk about this all day, because it's really, really, really interesting stuff. And it's been an issue for every single company that makes outbound dials, or that purchases leads or generates their own inquiries, is how do we obviously close more into sales? That's the number one objective. But for so many companies, they've sort of released, or they've just sort of just given up after they know that after 7-10 days of calling, they're just not going to get a hold of that person, and they just give up. They've sort of succumbed to trying to make anything beyond that work. But now there's an obvious solution to give it a try, and connect to those individuals, and close them into sales, which is pretty awesome. I think for every single company that, like I said, is either generating inquiries or buying it. And I'm not a sales pitch, because I have nothing to gain from this. I am somebody that used to buy leads and all this sort of stuff too. So it's just super interesting to me, and I would and hence having you on to talk about it. But I've got no stake in this at any rate, but I think it's really, really interesting. I would think companies would love to give this a try, but hopefully they'll reach out to you. I'll give you final words, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing about what you guys are doing, and frankly, your history, because I'm always interested in how people get from point A to point B.
Well, I left out all the really good stories, but
Well, maybe what we'll have to do is we'll have to bring you on again and talk about it, and sort of dive into some of those war stories about the affiliate space, because I know there's a ton of those.
yeah, there's some good ones. I think well, in closing, look, I really like solving the problems of our customers and helping them do better. So, like I said, I've got that performance background. So we're going to make a deal work if we can. And we're going to hit the KPIs that are set forth, by our clients. So we just enjoy the opportunity to help anyone we can. And,
Yeah.
I appreciate this time you've given me. Next time, let's do it with alcohol. I'll tell you all the good stories.
I know we definitely need to do that. Well, we're gonna be doing some live podcasts at Lead Generation World. Maybe we'll get you up there too, and talk about some of those war stories. Maybe like I said, for a what do they call it? Like a Lead Generation Live nighttime edition or something, like you said, with a couple cocktails or some tequila and some beer, whatever. That sounds like a good plan. But until then, again, I appreciate you joining. I look forward to seeing you in San Diego. And if anybody again wants to reach out to you, be sure to hit Brent up on LinkedIn. Brent Biggs, links in the comments, and then also datascore.ai. So, all right, my friend, I
Thank you.
appreciate it, and I will see you later.
Appreciate it. Bye.